My camera is working, but I'm in the hospital. I took my daughter there.
Oh, Pole. Will you be able to be with us?
Yeah, but I won't use my camera.
It's fine. That is okay. That's fine. All right. Do we then start in? I think we are ready to start. Dennis, I think we are ready to start.
Yes, you can start.
Do you have the GF commitments? You display them?
No. But I'll grant you access, as a host. You can be able to share them on your end.
No, thank you. When the lack of host, so that you can record. I'll forget to record. It's okay. We'll just speak through them. Let's start allowing in participants. Dennis, we are ready.
Hey, Isabella and Dennis.
Hi, Christine.
Please allow in participants.
Yes, we are ready. Good afternoon, participants. Daisy, I'd seen your hand go up. Did you want to ask something? Good afternoon. We're just waiting for a few more guys to join, and then we should be starting in the next 5 minutes. Kindly indulge us. Thank you. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isabella Mwangi. I'll be your moderator for this afternoon session, where we are very excited to be having a very vibrant of young female leaders who, in their day-to-day undertaking, have joined the process of the GF, or have joined the call to see how best they can be able to actualize the GF, who are going to be our panelists for today. And so I'm looking forward to an exciting, interactive, and a session where we are going to learn. And so without much ado, I would like to invite my panelists. I'll start with Anne. Kindly switch on your video and introduce yourself and organization.
Thank you so much, Isabella. I'm excited to be here this afternoon with this amazing panelists. My name is Anne Rose, commonly known as Anne Maua, and I'm the Executive Director of the Philanthropies Africa Initiative based here in Mombasa. We convene a Pan-African network of young women called Beijing Champions, Beijing Kwani Champions, where we localize the Beijing Declaration of 1995. Pretty much excited to learn from all of you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Anne. Zani?
Hi, everyone. I hope you're well. Thank you so much for joining us. Just like Anne said, it's quite an honor to be here among such a powerful panel, honestly. And we are very excited, and thank you to everyone for joining us. My name is Nima Nzani Kasim Zani. I'm from Kwale County, and I'm the founder and the executive director of the Hijabi Mentorship Program. So the Hijabi Mentorship Program is a community-based organization championing for gender equality and equity in Kwale County. That's where our office is, and that's where our work operates. And we focus mainly on matters to deal with sexual reproductive health rights, gender-based violence being a very core area of our work, and economic justice for women and young girls in Kwale County. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Zani, and Karibu Sana. Editor?
Wow, thank you so much. My name is Editor Diambo Cheng. I come from Kebera, and I'm really happy to be here. And as Zani has said, among these powerful young women, especially Zani and Anne Maua, and it's really encouraging because this is a conversation that we need every single day. We need to speak about equality every single day without feeling ashamed, because this is where the world is going, and this is the demand of women. I'm a feminist activist, and I work in Kebera. I work with young women to amplify their voices and also nurture their leadership skills using feminist approach. Asante.
Asante Sana. And lastly, Dulu.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Georgina Dulu. I work in the Ministry of Public Service, Gender, Senior Citizens Affairs, and Special Programs under the State Department for Gender, and I am the County Director, Kilifi County. And mainly our work, we do gender mainstreaming, sensitize and campaign against gender-based violence. We do socioeconomic empowerment, research, and policy, among other gender-related issues. And I'm very happy to be with you here today. Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. And your introduction then begins this session, where today we are bringing people, we have brought these panelists together to be able to discuss and be able to unpack what the GF commitments mean. We are all aware of the 12 commitments that the president proclaimed in March 2021, and that has been the steering, or rather the roadmap for organizations or anyone who's doing anything around issues of gender-based violence. We all also understand that the GF commitments were a very ambitious vision, and its main objective was to accelerate the progress towards eradication of gender-based violence and FGM, by 2026 and 2022 respectively. And because of its ambitious nature, we should be able to understand that the bigger vision of the GEF is to be able to see how they can reduce the gap or the inequities that are there, and hence be able to bridge that and be able to bring what we are calling gender equality in this country. The powerful action plans or action coalitions or the commitments are aimed at bringing about transformative change for coming generations. And that's why it was called generation equality, because it's not just the benefits of what we are trying to work for and towards right now will be reaped over successive generations. And to start us off, I think I would want first by asking to each of our panelists, what are some of the priority areas that you have been able to pick around the 12 commitments of generation equality in Kenya? What are you working on? And I'm going to start with Zani. Zani?
Isabella, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you please touch with someone else? I think my Wi-Fi just went off, so I need to change to data.
Okay, all right. Hi, Anne, are you with us? Can you proceed? Let's speak briefly about the priority areas that you have been able to pick and you think for you that is a priority.
Thank you so much, and please confirm to me that you can hear me, because like Zani, my internet also today is acting up. I think we need to apologize to our ancestors. Maybe that's why the network is not working. But yes, I like the fact that you started by saying that the priorities are really over-ambitious or really ambitious, because looking at some of the 12 commitments, then we'll have a lot of questions around the actualization and implementation of such priorities. But as an organization and also as the Beijing Pwani champions, we picked 4 priority areas, and one of the priorities actually on strengthening the priority around collaboration, strengthening collaboration between non-state actors. And this is because we felt like the question around GBV, first of all, affects all of us. But the way we are structured, sometimes we kind of work in silos where you find, for instance, governance people are working in their own departments, peace and security another, and GBV another. So, and also because of the nature of, the network of women that we are convening, then we are all agreed that, this is an area that we want to pick on. But also another area is calling for full implementation of the GBV policies, because part of the reason why Beijing Talks Pwani was actually formulated is so that we could fast track and take stock of existing policies for various thematic areas, and especially after reviewing them, calling for localization of the policies, and also enabling what we call now linking the policy to the needs of the common citizen on the ground. And the question we were actually asking ourselves really was, do people really understand, for instance, when we're talking about the menstrual health management policy? Because sometimes they really don't understand. Someone will tell you, wajua serikali inafai tupatie pads, lakini sijui kwa nini hawatupatie, and someone may not be able to really track and know. Maybe it's because we don't have an implementation framework, or because there is laxity somewhere within the Basic Amendment Education Act, etc. The other thing that we also prioritizing is also adopting and championing for the sectoral GEF leadership. And in the beginning of the conversation, I did mention that we had started conversation with the older Beijing's platform, the task force. And so for us, we are looking at how do we get more grassroots young women and even women to be part of these decision-making spaces. And again, it's also because of our role, because the platform that we have, Beijing Talks Pwani or Beijing's Pwani Champion, is about collectively synergizing and reclaiming our voice and agencies as young women in the coast region, but also amplifying the voices of the grassroots women. So much is being done at the ground, but nobody knows about it. And so we feel like if we prioritize this, as an organization and as a network, it will be easy for us to be part and parcel of, effecting the much needed change and acceleration of gender. And the last thing that we pick as a priority out of the 12 is the timely responses, or the priority on GBV prevention and responses in terms of the pandemic. And because we saw what happened with COVID-19, and so this is something that we are working on, and we are tying it to the bigger GEF commitments, especially the one on technology for gender equality, because we feel like there is a big role that technology can play in this. For instance, when we talk about peace and security, there are areas and anchorages that we can borrow from the models that the peace and security team is using, like the early warning, early response system that is in for peace and security, that can equally be used for GBV timely responses. So Isabella, I think those are the 4 commitments that we are looking at as an organization.
Thank you very much. Editor?
Thank you so much, Isabella. And from us at Feminist Center, we've decided to work on prevention and response mechanism, because this is important where we come from, because every single day, especially us who are coming from grassroots, cases are reported by women and young girls on gender-based violence and sexual and gender-based violence. Then when we are about prevention, this is how we are working. We ensure that we mentor our mentorship girls, and every Sunday we have a meeting. It's a meeting space for young girls, adolescent girls at Feminist Center. And also we do economic empowerment. And economic empowerment, we are selling soap, and we are selling our own t-shirts and our own things at Feminist Center. But we are really ventured on soap making, because we produce soap and we've dubbed it Femingarisha. And through our soap, we bring young women to have money in their pockets deliberately, because we believe that when we're financially independent, we can make our own assertive decisions. So we empower these young women to prevent gender-based violence and any other forms of violence, as a way to prevent gender-based violence and any other forms of violence. And again, we do response. And in response, we have survivor talking circles at Feminist Center, where we meet a survivor and we talk about this issue. And this is one of the ways that helps us to heal. And it's also one of the ways that helps us to come back in the community and do more activism to prevent gender-based violence. Because at Survivors Dialogue, we have unifying voices, and we understand each and everyone's story. And also we encourage young women to report their cases. And we also have a rescue center, and our rescue center is the smallest rescue center in the world. It's inside the village, and young women and women relate with the rescue center, and we rescue for 48 hours. After 48 hours, we refer because of our capability. And the advantage that we have today in our community, the rescue center is not funded, and the rescue center is fed by the community. So if you have a client, or if you have a survivor today, the community will take part and feed the person, a woman or the girl who is inside the rescue center. And another thing that we are doing, like Akina Ann, we collaborate. Last year, we did an exchange learning in Mombasa, and it was really awesome, because this is where we tend to understand why are we slowing down GEF commitment as individual, as a country, and even as a state. Because if young grassroots movements are not funded, if young grassroots are working in silo, then it means we are going to delay the commitment of GEF. And again, we also use the approach of youth peace and security and women peace and security, the way Anna has elaborated. And we look at early warning, early response. And for us, protection pillar is something that we've gone, is what we are working with, because we need to make government accountable. Because this is a commitment of UN, and government needs to be accountable, especially during and after conflict situation, for women and girls to be protected, and every citizen against sexual and gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Editor, over to you, Zani.
Isabella, I hope you can see me now and you can hear me. Yeah, thank you so much. So for us, the Hijabi Mentorship Program, as I earlier indicated, our four main areas, which GBV is topping. One of our most important commitments for us, we've selected 5 commitment areas that are our priority areas. And the first one being commit to strengthen collaboration with non-stakeholders. For us, we've been having, for the past 1 year, after we received the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation grant, we were able to conduct intergenerational dialogues in the communities, targeting different non-state actors in the communities, and some of us, including village elders, balozi wa mtaa, the administrators, the chiefs, the people who most of the time are not really considered when having these kind of conversations, but in one way or another have a certain impact in the continuation of GBV and who have an impact in the commitment of the GEF. So for us, commitment to the collaboration with non-state actors has been one of the most important one, which has been very productive, really, especially in the interior parts, because when it comes to Kwale County, there are some areas where people had never heard of the GEF. So for us, it's been quite a milestone really for the previous 1 year. We've also committed to integrating GBV services. I'm talking about the medical services, psychological services, and the legal services. So initially, as an organization, we didn't really have the expertise of providing medical services, and most of the time we would have to link the GBV victims to other service providers. But last year, we managed to partner with Addis Clinic, and Addis Clinic provided us with our own health officer in the office who has been helping us to respond to these cases, who has been readily available. And in fact, we've been offering mobile clinics in different parts, in different interior parts of Kwale County, some of those places where they probably don't even have access to a hospital. They don't have access to the information that they need. Like if something like this, unaenda pale unamuuliza, kuna issue hapa imetokea, what was followed, what protocols were taken, ama huyu victim wetu amesaidika vipi. Some of them have no idea about how to start. So we've been offering medical services for free, absolutely free, by the way, which we felt is a very important priority area in our community, especially for us, since we focus in underserved communities. And some of these women are always complaining about, yes, this happened to my daughter, but I didn't even have fare or transport to take her to the hospital. You're telling me I'm supposed to take her to the hospital, and with what fare? I don't even have money to feed these other children. Where do you expect me to get the transportation to take her to a good hospital where she's going to get help, or to take her to the police station? So for us, that was a very important priority area at the Hijabi Mentorship. Another one was committing to scaling up the National Police Service. Initially, early last year, we did a baseline survey before we started our Generation Equality project to check the status of accessing justice and, for the GBV victims and survivors. And we realized that there was a big gap when it comes to the administrations, especially the local administration. So for us, we've been having trainings specifically aimed at administrators, including the local police, to train them on how to handle such cases. So we've been working with the OCS department, we've been working with the gender desk at the police station to just, provide them with the basic training that some of them don't have, or maybe add up to what they have so that they can serve GBV victims and GBV survivors in a better way. Another commitment we have is commit to the full implementation of GBV laws. We've been having quarterly advocacy forums with stakeholders. This has been quite challenging, to be honest, but we've been having advocacy forums, inviting different stakeholders, the people who, are in charge of these policies, the people who make these policies. So it's been an ongoing conversation. I wouldn't say we're exactly where we want to be, because I remember this says, I think we're supposed, the commitment for this was it by 2022? I don't know, you can correct me, Isabella, but yeah, so yeah, of course, it's like Anne said, it was a little bit unrealistic, but it's been a work in progress. And yeah, so those are the commitment areas and priority areas we're focusing with at the Hijabi Mentorship.
All right, thank you very much. Dulu?
Thank you very much. So for Kilifi County, we've taken 7 key priority areas. We've taken commitment number 1 on the full implementation of GBV laws and policies. On this one, we are working on finishing our draft policies, gender and GBV, so that they can be enacted in Kilifi County. We are also working on a gender strategic plan together with the Office of the County Commissioner. And hopefully by June, we should be having the document. We've also taken commitment number 2, the one that talks on investments and increase allocation. And for this one, we are happy because we've been able to create advocacy around the budgeting process and the importance of public participation. And we've also have had partners who are coming on board. For example, soon we are having the bilateral program between Kenya and Finland on GBV response and prevention. Another commitment that we have taken is commitment number 5 on the development of GBV management and information system. And I'm happy to say that for Kilifi County, we have a Google document that is domesticated for Kilifi County. It's still a work in progress, but we hope that very soon we'll be having our own Kilifi County GBV data for consumption. We also taken commitment number 7 on integrating GBV services, that is medical, legal, and psychosocial. We want to see that our survivors are able to access all services at once, because we are having challenges of legal representations of our survivors. Yes, we have pro bono lawyers, but we do not have psychological, services that are adequate enough at the grassroots level, and that is something that we are ready to take up. We also took commitment number 10 on GBV prevention and response in crisis situations. For Kilifi County, we're one of the counties that is faced with severe drought and famine. And we've also had the challenge of COVID-19. So we are trying to put in place mechanisms whereby we are going to respond to GBV cases in such situations, and also, even before it happens, work on the prevention mechanism. For example, we are nearing the election period. So what we want to do is create more awareness on the dangers of the conflict that might come in it, and some of those red flags that we should look out for. We've also taken up commitment number 11 on strengthening collaboration with non-state actors. And for this one in Kilifi County, we have the Kilifi Gender Stakeholder Forum, which has been able to bring on board different development partners, persons who have interest in gender issues, to just come on board together with government officials, so that we can see how we can streamline gender issues in Kilifi County. We've also taken commitment number 12 on the adoption and institutionalization of the multi-sectoral GEF leadership structure. We already have the Kilifi County Gender Sector Working Group, and we have Kilifi County domesticated thematic areas that we are working on. And we've also come with what we are calling the Interdepartmental SGBV Coordination Forum, whereby we are able to bring on board all Deputy County Commissioners, all sub-county police commanders, all heads of department, to just sit down and see how best we are going to institutionalize these commitments in Kilifi County. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dulu. And if participants, if you've been listening, I'm sure you have seen their commitments where there's synergy in terms of around policies, around GBV prevention and response. That seems to be cutting across most of the panelists' areas of priority. But then there are those ones that are unique to some, like the data collection, like the collaboration and partnership. The issue of coordination, where Dulu is talking to us about the intergovernmental agencies or the multi-technical agencies. And so when we each do our part, then it slowly goes building towards the end goal. So thank you very much. Dulu, I'll start with you. As a county that was part of the piloting for the GEF Mashinani, what would you say is the response of the community regarding GEF, and also the response of the gender sector working group that you've just spoken about? And what are some of the ways you've been able to align your work with the GEF commitment from the gender group?
Thank you very much. So for Kilifi County, we are happy to be one of those very first counties to be piloting the GEF commitment. And we've been able to sit with relevant government, both county and national officials. And we've also been able to meet with the civil society organization. So through that, we've been able to draw a roadmap on how we are going to institutionalize this commitment. And some of those things that we've started doing is actually sensitizing the community on the GEF. And they are very happy that the government has, made these commitments, and partners are ready and willing to disseminate them to them and make sure that GBV cases are no longer an issue in Kilifi County. Because currently we have high cases of defilement and teenage pregnancies, which it requires a joint effort to actually counteract that. For the county gender sector working group, we already have partners, implementing partners on the ground that are being funded on GEF, and we are able to map them out, and they're very happy to share. So we are currently sharing our work plans and see areas of collaboration and see how we are going to merge together to actually work on the GBV response and prevention.
All right, thank you very much. And I think for me, for those who are focusing on GBV prevention and response, one thing I'd be able to urge is looking into prevention models. This is something that we often don't give it too much focus, which rightfully so, because GBV in its nature is more of a response and support type of issue. But then it would also be important to include the prevention aspect. What can we do, or what model can we be able to adopt, or what are some of the strategies we can be able to adopt to be able to see that we are changing the hearts and the minds of generations to come in regards to issues of gender-based violence. And I know you work very closely with communities over the years, and as you've said, you've been engaged in the Beijing platform. You're working with a lot of young people there, equally a lot of adults as well in issues around gender-based violence. Would you say that the commitments are aligned to some of the needs of the community, especially in regards to issues of gender-based violence, or just promoting gender equality?
Thank you so much once again, Isabella. And I would say that the GEF commitments are aligned to the community needs to a certain level, or to a certain extent rather, because sometimes when you're doing the needs assessment, or when you're capturing priorities, other priorities overlap others. And I feel like to a larger extent, yes, the commitment actually aligned to the community, because when we talk about all these 12 priorities, for example, increasing, the safe houses for GBV survivors, the financial commitments, and all these other commitments, it's for the benefit of the same community. But some of the gaps then will be underriding factor that we may tend to overlook. I will give a context, I would like to contextualize that a bit. In terms of now, when we talk about during the Generation Equality Forum, I think the second one, we also did Generation Equality Mashinani Forum, were calling it Generation Equality 001. And we had the Beijing champion and the communities, and we were actually unpacking some of those because we also did a watch party. And we were looking at how realistic are they and do they speak directly to our needs. And we were able to establish some gaps. And some of those gaps, we presented them in form of an outcome paper to the coalition actors. I think that time Femnet was convening some of those coalition actors. And I would say on a larger scale or in a bigger percentage, the commitment do really speak to the needs of the community, but better still, there is still need to review what this particular commitment means. When you're talking about the 23 billion that the president is committing, how does this translate to a woman who is facing GBV issues in Mwakirunge or I don't know, or in Kisauni, or whichever place that, is GBV prevalent. But then one of the other gaps that I saw, because also as an organization, we are working around online gender-based violence, because now during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a lot of psychological issues where people, were just being bullied. And sometimes we just have to look for, human beings are funny, we look for ways to vent online, then someone else takes advantage and it becomes, messy and all these things. So part of our work, because we also work on digital rights and digital inclusion, stroke internet governance, we are looking at online gender also a gap that we saw, because within the online gender-based violence, within, like GBV wholesomely, but we feel like if it's not separated, then you're not able to make clear pathways to dealing with online gender-based violence, and also in terms of prioritization. I know there is a myth, I don't know, I would like to call it a myth or misconception, because quite a lot of people within our communities actually think that, it's just, common figures, public figures that are being trolled. But we've had issues of revenge porn, especially to AGYW, where you find, a 13-year-old girl, pictures exposed on social media, and this is the group that is committing suicide. So for me, I see some issues are intertwining, but maybe they would have singled out the issue. But then again, the other issue and underlying factor is kangaroo courts. So in our outcome statement, we had mentioned that as an issue, because I know in maybe Mandera, Wajir, Garissa, we have issues of the maslaha system.
Rose, I think we
but here in Mombasa, did you lose me? Sorry, yes. Where did you lose me?
Kangaroo court.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, kangaroo court.
Amazing. So I was talking about kangaroo courts, and I was saying that I see someone is saying the audio is not. I'm sorry, today my internet is picking up. But then I was saying that in Mandera, Wajir, and Garissa, we know there are issues of maslaha system. But then for us in Mombasa and some parts of coastal counties, we have kangaroo courts where the communities decide, what, we don't even need to go to the police station and report this. So we can just end the thing. So that is one of the gaps that we saw that is not captured in the 12 commitments. But then maybe, I don't know, maybe it's within the broader, but I feel like that one really needed to come out. But again, even as we are looking at this commitment, Isabella, there is also something called context specific. And yeah, because the context of Mombasa, for example, is not the context of Kwale, despite the fact that we are both, within the coastal counties. And just in terms of how are we as actors, both state and non-state actors, in terms of now developing even reporting mechanism, especially the accountability part of the commitment really is not very clear. And I am glad that we're having this conversation, because that is one area that I really want to unpack and see what accountability frameworks look like for this gender-based violence, And then the last thing that we really saw as well as a gap is the intersectionality of these programs. that, or rather the commitments in terms of how do we bring different sectors. I know there is an aspect of collaboration, but when it is left blank, and we always say, you know, the law is very vague. So when the commitment is left really blank, then there are loopholes in there, because then we are not talking about like how are these issues interconnected. So the interconnectedness of the issue, because I know when you're talking about collaboration, we are thinking private sector, we're thinking media, we are thinking all these things, but then we need the interconnectedness needs to come out clearly. And last, the issue of amplifying and celebrating the existing efforts. For us, I feel like this is really important. And I don't know, Isabella, you could correct me whether it's ambitious to want to have amplification of the voices at the commitment level, or maybe it should come as a strategy. But then I feel like this is really important. Now, during the 16 days of activism, we had a fireside chat with Pan-African women from different countries, and we wanted to have different case studies where we call the meeting online, you know, the roadmap to ending online gender violence. But then during the same meeting, we also mapped out young people who are doing amazing work in GBV, and we awarded them an award of GBV Warrior, African GBV Warrior at Mombasa County, because we felt like we have done a lot really, but then amplification of voices need to be there. How do we document? How do we report? But I know that the next questions will speak into reporting mechanism and framework, and potentially how we can strengthen that. Thank you so much, Isabella.
Thank you so much. And I like how you've said these issues need to be contextualized. And indeed, this is what we need to, this is where we need to be heading to in terms of these commitments are actually quite broad. But then different counties, different institutions are supposed to pick these issues and synthesize them and come through them and be able to see this commitment suits very well with me. Like the issue of the maslaha, that actually falls under commitment number 1, which is the GBV laws and policies, because then it's the institution of how do you respond to issues of GBV laws, to GBV offenses, which is clearly articulated in the laws. But then we also have the issue of culture, because that is part of their culture and how they respond to issues. And so it's just really being able to pick and see what works and how will you be able to situate it in your current condition. I like the fact that you have also spoken into the issue of accountability. And I think that is going to be our next question. Editor, when it comes to holding the state accountable, what and how does accountability look like to you? Because these 12 commitments, remember, they have a timeline: FGM by 2022, GBV eradication by 2026. And if for that to be able to happen, we must be able to see the wheel is rolling. And so how are we able then to hold each other as well as the government accountable?
So from where I see it, I will look at a view of public participation, because if you want to hold government accountable, and the reality is even Mama Mboga doesn't understand about GEF. So we are speaking about a new thing that so many people don't understand the commitment that Kenya had last year. So it is important for us to make the government or the state accountable, to sensitize the community on Generational Equality Forum, so that everyone can understand what Generation Equality Forum means as a state or as citizens of this country. So number 2, also, I would love the government to integrate GBV with health services, because there is a huge gap. Like here in Kibera, most of the time when we rescue women, then we use our own money to treat these women, because GBV is a pandemic in this country, but because it affects so many women, the government has not put so much measures the way it's supposed to be at grassroots level to ensure that we are ending gender-based violence. So it is important at every sector, even wherever we are working, to have a GBV policy, to integrate GBV in everything that we do. And when we integrate GBV, also it is important to intersect GBV in different angles. because gender-based violence is huge. It affects women, yes, but also it affects minority, like women who identify differently, trans women in a different way. So it is important when we speak about integration, then we need also to add the government to use intersectional approach on this matter. Again, the government right now needs to strengthen his network so well, because working with the same people, it means government cannot reach people on the ground. The government needs to build a strong synergy so that they can work with Akina Zani huko Kwale, they can work with Akina Maua, they can work with us at grassroots level, because this is something that is missing. When the government is working with the gender department, they feel that they're reaching everyone, and that is not the case. Another thing is about this money. If you want to make a government accountable, even me, I'm talking about 23 million US dollars. Kwanza, inanifanya kichwa inaniuma kwa sababu I don't know how much that money is. So if you want to make a government accountable, they need to simplify this money. We need to understand what money are we speaking about and what work will the government do with this money, and having an action plan, a simple action plan whereby everyone will understand about this money, about the plans and how it's going to be implemented. And I talked about creation of awareness, and it's important, the accountability part of it also, to bring the voices from the grassroots to develop GBV information, because there is something that is missing when the government itself is working on information system. Then most of the time, the voices like ours, it is misses on this platform, because government also wants to report what is not happening on the ground. Like they're trying to manage gender-based violence, but that is not the case. So when we are missing also the statistics every day that government reports are always not the real statistics, because we are missing a huge number of voices from the grassroots level. And again, for GEF, if government want to speak about ending gender-based violence and other form of violence in 2026, my accountability is, I'm asking the government again the question, is it realistic? Because for me, it is not realistic. It is 1 year since since our president was in Paris talking about GEF commitment. And believe me, in Kebera, I've never seen what the government or the state is doing. We've never felt this money, if it is working in Kebera or it is working somewhere else. So it means also we need to talk about transformative action towards achieving and advancing gender equality as citizens of this country. How then do we trickle this GEF down so that every person, especially grassroots and rural women, to understand, to bring their solidarity so that we can have transformative action, not for 2026, but even the 100 years that are coming, and even the next generation, to ensure that we are ending gender-based violence as a team. And talking about GEF, if I come from grassroots and I don't understand about GEF, let me tell you, even the member of parliament, so I don't know who I'm going to make accountable, because for me, when I speak about government, also something that comes in my mind, I'm supposed to speak about member of parliament. And I'm sure my member of parliament doesn't understand what is GEF. So it means from parliamentary view, we don't have money to manage gender equality forum. So my accountability is a bit harsh. It is because of the experiences that we're getting on the ground, and it's because government has not been real with the statistics, because every single day women are experiencing gender-based violence, and when they go to report, they are getting stress, and so many women are also not attending courts because of threats and because they cannot leave their work. So that's why I'm really harsh on this accountability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Editor. And indeed, it's because, accountability is the core. If we are not sure where, as you said, this investment, these billions are going, we'll just be saying the government has said this, but then there's nothing that we are able to show in regard to how that investment has been utilized. And Dulu, I think for me, let's continue this conversation on accountability. As a state, how do you want to be accountable to the citizens or the residents of Kilifi County? in regards to issues of gender equality?
I mean, my own opinion, accountability is everyone taking responsibility in terms of eliminating GBV. This is not something that the government can do alone. This is not something that the CSOs can do alone. This has to start right from the grassroots level at the smallest unit, the family unit. Because if we do not do that from the ground, holding each other accountable from the family setup, then I think we would have lost the whole part of prevention. And what we are aiming here for is prevention, because a response really comes after it's already been done. Someone somewhere has been molested. But for me here, we have to root out the issue from down there so that it does not become such a hassle. Because all these commitments, to me, I think if we come together, these are realistic. If we really come to hold hands. For example, I'm giving an example because this one is coming right to Kilifi County in terms of the 23 billion, is it billion? Millions, 23 million, yeah. It's coming to Kilifi, and this is through the Kenya-Finnish program, bilateral program. And the contribution of the government to this program is that they're going to contribute 1 million euros to this program, and it's going to be implemented in 3 counties, Kilifi, Bungoma, and Samburu. And through this, for me, I think it's a plus. The government is already showing that they can do this, and some money has already been approved, and it's going to start rolling out. And we are hoping that even in the other county, it is going to roll out. Something else is about transparency. In everything that we do, even as government officials, everything has to be in a transparent manner. In our court processes, we just have to be transparent with ourselves. We have to be transparent with the citizen. We have to be transparent to our survivors. And that is the only way that we can build that ownership to these commitments to actually end GBV by 2026. And something else, it's about us having, I'm just about to switch to Kiswahili, mwito, kukuwa na ile mwito and the drive to actually make sure that you do the right thing, you yourself. What are you doing at your own personal level? We are talking about GBV as if it's something alien, and yet it happens to some of us in our own workspaces. How are we making sure that we are safe space ourselves? How are we making sure that our workplaces are safe, even before now we go to the grassroots level? So that is something else that we really need to ponder on it. Thank you.
All right, so Dulu, what we are hearing is that one, the government has been accountable by declaring how much money they're putting into the investments of gender-based violence. Then additionally, they have even gone further to articulate this money is going specific to issues of gender, which for you, that is goodwill that the government is willing to bring now people on the table and start having this discussion. And I think for us now who sit on this other end, for us it would be having very open conversations. And as you're talking about transparency, for us, part of transparency means engaging with the stakeholders from the beginning and not just bringing them in, like you're inviting them from the beginning, designing these programs and initiatives where this money is going to go to, and having very clear activities as well as responsibilities, so that then we know whom to task and whom do we ask when things go wrong. So, and what is that in Mombasa? How does this accountability look like? And what is accountability to you?
Okay, thank you so much once again, Isabella. And for Mombasa and even accountability really in general. One, and I will speak from my end, because one of the things that we are doing for us now as Uzalendo, when we are supporting the Beijing champions to implement this, because now we have the health cluster that is the one that is in charge of doing GBV work and SRHR work. So what they have done first is to join the TGWs, and also trying to get into the county gender stakeholders, or what is it? I think it's called that. But then what really accountability means, it means co-designing and co-creating solutions together, and also just co-creating even in terms of the roadmap. But to be very, very honest, I have not seen the roadmap for Mombasa yet, but I know there is a meeting that is supposed to take place to that effect. But then we are looking at collectively, how are we going to synergize and collaborate to see that just what you have said, that we're in the same page in terms of these initiatives where this money is going to go to. But also then I wanted to speak into something that Editor said, which is the politics of language in terms of program implementation and also initiative implementation. When you tell a local woman in Kongowea market or Majengo market 23 billion, milioni moja yenye hadayo na sura yake. So how do they relate to this? How do we make communities part and parcel of accountabilities? And I know we must strengthen coordination in such a way that there's this specific group that is looking at something. But again, for me, community involvement is key because I'm at the grassroots. So how do we make sure that communities really participate in these accountability frameworks that are going to be developed? In the beginning of the conversation, I did mention that we are looking forward having follow-up meetings with the GEF committee, just to see how do we get to position young women in Mombasa and Coast to be part of those, but also now as a county, collectively. From the other side of it, which is now the governance bit, the accountability has always been through the budget making processes, because again, some of these things that we are going to do must come through legislations for them to be, for them to be passed or for them to be effected. So on the flip side of it, then is also about everybody playing their part, just what Dulu said, in terms of you do your part and us we will do our part, and then for us, then we will mobilize communities when that time comes for public participation to hold them. But again, we cannot really move the community to hold the government accountable if they do not, first of all, understand the process. So I am really eager to see what kind of frameworks are going to be put in place to know then how we are going to simplify that to a language that the community understand. I'm going to give this example. I hope the people of governance won't kill me. Part of the challenges and struggles that we have had as people working around governance and policy is in terms of implementation of the documents and frameworks that we have in a language that communities can understand. Editor just told you that Mama Mboga atakwambia kwa nini nifunge duka langu niende kwa mkutano, am I going to be paid? But then is how do we connect the struggle to actually, how do we make sure that the citizen understand that why they should participate in such a process? Na kama hawezi kuelewa the process of budget making itself and how budgets speak to them. Right now we are talking about the prices of fuels going up, and all these things, austerity measures, etc. So if the citizen does not understand that, then even when it comes to measuring GEF commitment, where even some members, our honorable members do not understand what it is, then I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of putting the proper structures in place and just collaborating together and now developing the interconnectedness and the intersectionalities to make sure that if the governance side is the one that understands these processes, how do we work collectively with the health departments, with the TGWs, and then for us now who get to be in these spaces, how will we take the information down so that even some of these commitments, tumeanza kusema kwa they are very unrealistic, some of them. they can find their way into key county documents such as the CIDP. We just had, a new government. How do we make sure we package these commitments well so that they can some of this can be factored in the CIDP so that we start on a clean slate, and we also have like proper mechanism and also interlinkages and anchorages between the national and county government. As much as these issues are devolved, but it is the national government that committed. And let's just say Kilifi is very proactive in this. So I am also looking forward to seeing forums or open spaces for sharing, reflecting, and learning. For instance, I know now in Mombasa, when we start having such conversation, is there a way that we can have inter-county forum learning so that we can learn from Kilifi that has shown that they are proactive enough to even now devolving that national commitment to their level and even making the money make sense. Editor amesema 23 billion kichwa inamuuma. So at least for Kilifi, the money makes sense, we understand. So yeah, that is what I can say from my end.
All right, and so from what I'm hearing from you is, one, you're in the process of developing a roadmap. I must say that the government does have the national coordination body for the GEF. And I know this week they were also in the process of developing a roadmap, a budget, and an accountability framework. So maybe you would then be able to reach out to these spaces and find out what are these initiatives that you have in place, and then how can we align also with our activities, because they're not so far from what I've had you discussing. And so maybe that is a point to action for all of us to be on the lookout for that or to go seeking for that information. I think the coordination body, the GF coordination body is sitting at the ministry, I think, or AMREF, one of the two. And for you, I've also had the issues of intersectionality. And at this point, is Eunice still, Eunice Pande? Eunice Pande? Eunice, can you unmute so that we see whether your question on intersectionality has been responded to at this point? Oh, I unmute you, okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Isabel and panelists, group of young women that I've known for great work that you're doing. Thank you very much for the insights and some of the work you are doing in the grassroots, just to ensure that GBV is eradicated. I'm Eunice Pande, based in Nairobi. I work with an organization called the Midrift. We do mostly peace, security, governance, and human rights. I'm also a researcher on GBV and other peace and security issues. Talking about intersectionality, when gender is diverse, and it was not actually a question, but I would like to have that discussion where we think of how we include people, all the vulnerable group, that is in terms of age, gender, disability, even race. When we are thinking of domesticating the frameworks on gender, and also ensuring that we know the policies and ensure that the policies are not only at the national level, but at county level. Just like the gender-based violence policies on gender-based violence or domesticate, like localized into to counties, I would like to us to reach a point whereby even these policies and these agreements are localized into our local county governments, whereby we have so that the people at the ground, our communities are able to know of these policies, are able to know of these deliverables that were made during the forum, so that we don't just talk of them here, but we have a conversation. Even with it's so bad to say that a member of parliament don't even understand them. But how do we make them understand? When you go to a county government, most people, most of the parliamentarians, and also even at the county level, there's a lot of bills that are being passed per day, and some of our leaders might not even have a proper knowledge of it, but how do we make them have it? Through having a round table and discussing these things. And how do we discussing? By involving like everyone, which means you involve both men and women, involve both gender, both old and young, so that when we speak of these things, everyone have an idea what it is about, so that even if when time reach for budgeting, and so they can recommend it even in the budgets, and so that even people in the community are able to benefit from these policies. When you talk of these billions, how are they being, how are we being integrated into our local budget, so that it gets to the person, to the right bearer, who is able to benefit from it? Yes. So my thinking is, first we think of a way of localizing it, and ensuring that our people are aware of it. The people at the local ground, the police, the duty bearers, the service providers, the community leaders, the community elders. We ensure that our policy makers, both at county and national government, are aware of it, and are also being able to include it in the budgetary. And also we ensure that there is collaboration for multi-stakeholder collaboration, and also advocacy for the same. Yes, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Eunice. And indeed, intersectionality is quite important, because now we need for societies, for the communities, for our leaders to understand that the issue of gender equality is not a single-based issue. We need to find ways even to be able to connect the issues of gender, especially with the alignment of the 12 commitments, to other issues such as agriculture, climate change, issues around social, so that we must always be able to bring out that connection, so that we are then able to demonstrate how this impacts men and women differently. But in as much as it impacts men and women differently, women and children, or girls, women and children, who are always the most impacted, how then does that impact look like? When we currently experiencing this climate change, how are the women who are usually the ones who are in the agriculture sector, how are they suffering? When it's issues of finance, what is the impact of gender when it comes to issues of finance? So I agree with you, Eunice, in issues of intersectionality, very key in our programming, and it will also be able to help us to be able to understand and elevate the issues and get a wider range in terms of who is listening to us. My last question to the panelists is, and I'll start with you, Zani, how can partners or communities, and because we've had that for these commitments to be actualized, everyone has a responsibility, then what level of support do you need in your advocacy and influencing spaces to be able to speak out about the generational equality, to be able to undertake your initiatives?
Speaking as a young feminist in working in the civic space, has been doing this. The first, when Georgina was talking about holding ourselves accountable first, when it comes to the community, the first thing I would say is to advise the community to speak up, to attend local hearings, to speak up during these hearings. And because we have this, especially in my community of
Annie, I think we seem to have lost you.
Sorry, can you hear me? Oh, I'm so sorry about my network. especially in my community, I've realized that women rarely speak up during public forums. So when it comes to the community, I would urge my community to speak up during hearings, to attend these hearings. Yes, to close hivyo vibanda vya soko once a while, sio vibaya. Haileti hasara to live for just an hour or 2 hours to be part of this. But when it comes to support as a young feminist in this advocacy journey of the GEF, the first one being the most important one would be financing and funding. And I'm saying this because I've realized that most of the time, young feminists or young organizations, or organizations that are starting up, or organizations that are being led by young feminists, especially when it comes to matters gender, we get sidelined because you're told maybe you do not have the experience that the donors need, or you don't have the the work experience, the expertise. So for them, it's like the risk is too big, for us to invest in you, the risk is too big. But I'd like to urge other donors to check, like for example, what CREW did by using the Women Voices and Leadership Program, where they actually accepted young grantees. Like that is how we get to be funded, and that is how we get to be supported, because one donor decided to take a risk and invest in us and support our work. So for me, it's just to urge other donors, the government, these billions, we want to see them kule kwenye community. Mutuletee hizi, hata kama hautupatia a billion for every community, lakini at least tupatie like $1 million or something. We need to see that money, because in the end of the day, for example, Kwale County, we have a population of around 800,000 people based on the 2019 census that was conducted. And I'm looking at, as one person, or as Hijabi, a team of about 19. Tell me, how do you expect me to manage to reach to 800,000 people, to communicate to them about the GEF without money? So in the end of the day, financing young feminist organization is critical to achieving the commitments of GEF and for it to be successful. And another thing that's very important is capacity building. Please do not, most of the time we make excuses. You say, oh, it's a good organization, but they don't have the capacity. Come in then, check the step. Tupatia your capacity, build their capacity. You've seen the work that young organizations are doing in the community without the funding. So you can imagine how much more they'll be able to do with it. So give them the capacity and then give them the money, because kama wewe mwenye you can't come down kule, nikwambia nenda kule lungalunga, kule ndani ndani, you won't be able to go there. But I'm willing, my team and I are willing. How about you support us, empower us in a way that we'll be able to reach and communicate and, empower other communities. So for me, those are like the most critical part that I believe that partners can support young feminists. And please do not shy away from taking a risk, from supporting us, because in the end of the day, it only takes one person to believe in you. It only takes, that one person to believe in you is going to create bigger opportunities for you to create impact in your community.
Thank you, Zani. Thank you, Zani. Editor? Do we have editor? Are you still there? Okay, we'll go to Rose. And Rose, when it comes to support, what does that look like for you? Is it always finances? What are the other spaces that perhaps you want a jumpstart or some type of support to amplify the voices of women?
Sorry, my phone was shrinking. Internet, Safaricom pia wameweza kutuibia.
Okay.
Okay. Let's take editor. Let's take editor first, and then we'll come next, Rose. Thanks.
So
yes,
for me, when
editor?
it comes on matters of support, solidarity is a big deal here. Because I use feminist approach, for me, solidarity is everything, because solidarity is a network that we've already built. Solidarity is a network that wants also to help, and just building relationship, especially with the activists. I would urge everyone here on this space to build relationship with other people, because people want to support in very different way. It is not monetary, but also we've realized at grassroots level, we are so passionate enough. We are capable enough, because people like me and other young women in Kibera, we've arrested perpetrators. And Tanane ya usiku, it was not easy to arrest perpetrators when the police will tell us they are the inaitwa pickup, hii gari ya polisi, Range Rover didn't have fuel. So we had to wait until saa 8 ya usiku, tunaingia kwa kijiji, and then we arrest perpetrators. And all that again, sincerely, it needs finance. And I've already said, in our center, in our rescue center, we've never used our tent. UNFPA gave us beddings, and the community has always been supportive. And for that, for me, that is a support. And again, like what we are doing, the approach we are doing, we are having today in Madare, Coalition of Grassroots Human Rights Defenders, and here in Kebera, just nurturing young women where they are living in their own village to come out and end gender-based violence, to come out and accelerate Generation Equality Forum. It is something that is working, and for me, that is the support.
Edita, we have lost you.
Yeah, unanisikia?
All right, thank you, Edita. Yes.
And
next to you, and next Rose. Oh, sorry.
I'm finishing. For me, support, I was saying, like, what the approach that we are doing today, forming a grassroots movement that are so local, that are so embryonic. And it has really made sense to us because this is the support that we want. Because these girls can relate with, they have different experiences, but the experiences are similar. Like for me, when I go to Kisumundogo village, every day I see that home that I was defiled. And this makes my anger to be agitated every single day. So when I went back to that community to sit with girls, to nurture girls, to mentor girls, they resonated with me easily. And coming out so strongly, and they're like, we are not going to allow this bullshit to continue. We are going to stop it. So that for me is already a support, because support should be like a cross. Ukona support hapa juu, but huku chini pia kuna wale watu wanakusaidia ku ensure that we are achieving this goal of accelerating gender equality. And it's something that has worked. Although if people have money and they have money to invest, especially on young women, they need to. Because hii kazi si rahisi. Kushika perpetrator, kumpeleka kwa police station, bila injury, bila anything, si rahisi. If you have enough money, we can look at a way to work with even police, because sometimes ukweli Land Rover inanga mafuta, unaona, na si polisi. Hii ni nini ya government wako strategic. Polisi aseme haina mafuta juu labda jela imejaa, ama kuna vitu zingine, perpetrators wengine wako na nguvu hata kushinda government, na perpetrators wengine ndio wanalipa tax mingi kwa hii country yenye government haiwezi taka hata kuwatingisha. So hizi pia we need to change our dialogues and also look at nini na limit easy support, because our support network has been weak in this country, to be sincere. Na polisi anaribu, judiciary, ukifika kwa judiciary kuna mambo ingine, lawyers wako corrupt, huku chini hospitali ya provide zile services zinatakikana, ama watu wenye wamepigwa wako wengi, wenye wako na kesi za gender based violence wako wengi hata kushinda kesi zingine, madaktari wako overwhelmed. So the support system ya GBV ya ensure that wale survivors wanahudumiwa vizuri haziko, na kesi zinaenda zikiongezeka. So for me, even in this platform that I'm seated in, this is a network. And it is not only a network that when we need to speak is when we are calling ourselves, so that at least we can bring our ideas, but it needs to be continuous dialogue. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Editor. And Anna?
Thank you so much, Isabella. It's very difficult to speak after two powerful people have spoken. You're like two powerhouses, and they've spoken into most of what I wanted to say. But also still, I will say the kind of support, maybe because without repeating, is can you hear me? Okay. The network has started, yeah, but the kind of support that we will need is intergenerational support. And what do I mean with this? Now, we have women who have been in this space since some of us were informed, I don't know. And now with some of us who came, how do we find a common ground? How can we have a space for knowledge transfer, for skill share? Of course, contexts are different now, the dynamics are changing, but I know we can learn building an ecosystem of women, because just like how there is this popular narrative of women are enemies of their own women, and patriarchy has managed to use that, then how are we able to create a system whereby we don't define ourselves as, of course, there are those realities where young women, they're a bit established, but can we find synergies so that then they can support us when we want to join this national movement? Can you stop locking us out because you'll be like, oh, this is coming in? Because that is the feeling I get, especially for me who works in the peace and security, space, and that has always been the challenge where people feel like, the upcoming younger women don't have much of the experience. But again, sometimes I sit down and I ask myself, when we are talking about violence and peace, who do they point at? The women, the young women, the youth. So if we are not part of the processes, what solution are they developing without us? So I think really it's a question of how do we transfer the skills? And I hope they won't kill me, but then if you are a bit established, don't transit with the knowledge without sharing it. Make another you, make many yous, just hold somebody's hand. So that was the issue of accompaniment. And then also, I know Nima and Editor talked about the issue of capacity, but now also capacity in terms of how best do we document young women's voices across the region, what are these things that we need to know so that we document? Because documentation is not that just a question of amplifying your story, Isabella, on social media platform. Who are we targeting in our documentation? So I'm talking about strategic positioning and branding of young women. I think that is also the kind of support that we need, but also making global networks and transnational, regional, all these networks work for us, because the kind of work that we have really is highly dependent on networking and movement building. In fact, we should really consider movement building because we cannot achieve it alone. I am in Mombasa, yes, but we do a lot of programs with Editor, with Shiko in Nakuru, with a young woman in Siaya, and that's it. That's the kind of networking and approaches that we want. But then also the other and the most important one is community support. This work that we are doing on behalf of the community. If communities are not going to understand what is it that we are doing for them, then we are alone, And I know it sounds crazy, but yes, that is also a reality whereby in our programmatic approaches, in us developing solutions, we must develop them with the community in such a way that they're intended with what we want to propel, even as we are speaking on behalf of them. So community support and also expansion of women's spaces, but also allow me to also overemphasize on the need of strengthening oversight institution. You've heard what Editor has said, that polisi wenyewe wako corrupt, kesi naisha pali kwa court, and then also the other thing I wanted to speak about, which necessarily may not be what kind of support I may need, is popularization of the frameworks that we are going to create, and then also strengthening reporting frameworks. And I cannot overemphasize on the strengthening of reporting frameworks and popularizing them, because people do reports and they are reporting, but how many people know that we are supposed to report first of all? Na hii kitu ya kureport ni nini na huwa iko wapi? So I think we also need that kind of support where if there is a national framework to be reported, for example, in the peace and security, we have the Kenya National Action Plan that is localizing Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security, and they do have a framework. And there is the other one for African Union. Now we can only gain visibility if we report and talk about the issues that communities are facing, but how many people know about that thing, but also harmonization of this reporting tool, so that as far as you have a reporting tool, say for Kwale, for where, but they're fitting into one process. Then also, of course, strengthening coordination efforts for us as young women, between us, the community. And I like the part where you talked about intersectionality, because I think gender-based violence cuts across all sectors. So how do we build support and synergy and collective solidarity in all this sector? Like we were hosting a conversation on African Continental Free Trade Area. We're just looking at what this framework means for the local women. And we were told by the women who are doing trade at cross-border, where like we have maybe Taita Taveta, Tanzania border, that they also experience sexual gender-based violence, and it's even worse for them because where do they report? So we can only achieve, full acceleration of gender equality, or even this vision that we want to do by 2026 with solidarity. I cannot overemphasize on that, and both technical support and financial support, like what Nima and Editor said. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Rose. I would now like us to focus on some of the questions and comments by our panelists, by our participants. And I want to, so Dulu, there's a question I'd want you to tackle there. And this was asked by Salim around issues of gender responsive budgeting at counties. Is that something that is now popular, say in Kilifi County? Is it something that you intend to do? How do counties usually go around the issues of gender responsive budgeting? And then the next one, it would be Joanne. I will unmute you. You talk to us a little bit about mental health and gender equality. Joanne Opot, right after Dulu. Yeah, thank you, Dulu. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So in terms of resource allocation for Kilifi County, it's a work in progress, I can say, because at this time we're trying to create awareness, because as we know, the CIDP is just around the corner, and everyone has to, have that, to see the importance of their input in this document and see areas of improvement, because for a very long time we've seen that gender issues about changing our perspectives, our behavior. It's not something tangible. And so for that to get a lot of allocation, then it means that our people in the ground have to come up very strongly across each and every sub-county at the ward level to just see that their issues are being addressed in the document. So that is what I can say as at the moment. Meanwhile, at the national level, we are headed by our CS, Margaret Kobia. And with that, we are glad because we've seen some improvements. We are having donors coming to our ground. We are having support from different organizations. CRU, you've been our biggest supporter, AMREF, UNFPA, and they have really been pumping allocation into Kilifi County. We cannot say that it is enough. It's still limited. There's a lot that needs to be done. And therefore, we really have to continue the narrative of, just advocating for more resources. And even as we think about 2026, let's think also about the after. What happens after 2026? As much as we are talking about these commitments. So I think that is also something that we have to ponder on and work on as we progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dulu. I was looking for Joanne. Is John still with us? John Opot? John, I can't see you on the list of participants. I wanted to unmute you. If you're there, just put your hand up. I see where you are, so I can unmute. Oh, has she left? Okay, but in regards to issues of mental health, and what would you tell us about the connection of mental health and gender-based violence? I've seen there's a discussion that was taking place at the chat. What is the interlink of mental health and gender-based violence?
I think there is a very clear and direct connection between mental health and gender-based violence, because when you experience gender-based violence in all its forms and manifestation, then definitely you'll be having, you'll be traumatized, you'll be having all these challenges. And and necessarily by manifestation, I mean, if you are bullied online, then what do you do to yourself? That's why during the pandemic, we actually experienced a lot of a lot of young people committing suicide because of cyberbullying, because of revenge pornography, because of all these things. And of course, they were locked in with their perpetrators, so it's easy. So for me, I would say there is a very big interlinkage, and my appeal or call to both state and non-state actors is to now find those linkages and anchorages between the two, even in terms of policy and strategy. Because if you look at mental health, I know that there is a policy that was developed, and I know there is a GBV policy. So at what point are they intersecting? So it's more of harmonization of this effort to deliver as one, in terms of, it could be the state actors or non-state actors, because we cannot separate the issue of mental health from GBV, because whether you're physically beaten or abused or emotionally abused or psychologically abused, you'll somehow be mentally disturbed. But then the other thing I think I would like to speak into is promoting what are they called? Psychological services seeking mentality. And Dulu just put it clearly and said this is an issue of perception, because even in our African context, and we are Africans, and I'm proud to be one. I am not condemning Africanism, but we know that we do not have, help-seeking behaviors. Ukimwambia mtu you're going to a psychiatrist, they'll be like, are you okay? So for me, it's how best, and I'm glad that Dulu, you're here because now you represent the state. How best can county governments and national government find linkages through which they could link the policy? Necessarily, they don't need to do even one, but just find areas of intersectionalities. And maybe to give a reference to the WS pillar again, when Editor is talking about protection work, which is one pillar of WPS, and the prevention pillar, they speak to each other. And I think the pillar on protection also talks about psychological protection for human rights defenders, but then it can be expanded to actually speak to the community. So yes, Isabella, there is quite a big interconnectedness. It's a question of how do we collectively plan and budget for joint actions, joint initiatives, joint solutions, joint policies, joint everything, Isabella.
Thank you. And I think as we also talk about mental health, I know at the parliament level, legislation level, there is a mental health piece of legislation they're working on. Then it would also be for us to be on the lookout and see that there are issues of gender that in line with that. There's also the UHC policy that was launched. Again, it lacks anything to do with issues of gender. Yet one of the things that was meant to be present is the GBV minimum package for health under the universal health care. So those are some of the things I think we can be able to look into and pick up and be able to amplify and see how best we can be in those spaces. Are there any other questions? Anyone else with a question? Maybe you can put your hand up and ask. We have about 8 minutes left, and I'm one who loves keeping time. So any questions before I allow my panelists to give us their last word? And for last word, kindly keep it very brief and very precise and concise. One action. That is actually what I would want in terms of last word. Just give me one action. So we'll start with you, Zani. One action, which is your last word.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
For me, my one action will be scaling up of interventions and finance support towards GEF, especially at the grassroots level.
Okay, so interventions. Editor, is scaling up interventions. That's what Zani would want to see. Editor, your last word, action.
Action. Let us do it. Let's continue doing it.
Let us do it and continue doing it.
Mm.
Thank you very much. Rose?
For me, my one action will be collective solidarity for localization of all these interventions that we are making.
Thank you very much. Dulu?
For me, to be leveraging on the available resources because they can never be enough. So therefore, we need to combine forces. And we also need to leverage on the spaces that are available. We have the Nyumba Kumis that are there. We have the COCs, court users committees. We have area advisory committees, and we need to cascade the GEF to also these committees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Participants, anyone with a question before we close? Thank you very much for being with us, for engaging us, for the questions and the conversations that have been going on the chat separately. Thank you to our very enlightened panelists that have really shed light and shared and expressed their feelings, thoughts around the issues of generation equality. Indeed, this is a huge and positive step that the government has done. And more so because these are purely focusing on issues of gender equality. And so it is up to us, as most of you have said, to come and coalesce ourselves, solidify ourselves around these commitments and guard them to ensure that the government is able to actualize them. In our own spaces, we can come up with accountability frameworks, which we can then share with county governments and see if this is something that is doable, being able to track activities, being able to track resources, and disseminating this information to the community. When it comes to the co-creation and co-designing of these programs, it would be important for you to be the liaison for the communities, to call them together and tell them, look, the government is doing this. How do you want to see this happening? Because communities have over years and years, they've had their own mechanisms of dealing with issues of gender equality, of issues of offenses of gender-based violence. Let's not ignore those community initiatives, because those small initiatives, once we scale them up or build up on them, then this is what leads and translates to sustainability in the community. And sustainability, as we know, translates to a step closer to eradication of issues of gender-based violence. When it comes to issues of FGM, they are the hotspot counties where we have seen FGM is happening. Of course, now there's been a dynamic shift in how FGM is being handled. We have seen medicalization of FGM, where children are now being taken to hospital and it's being booked into as a medical procedure, and so no one is going to question you. Let's sensitize our communities on the dangers of female genital mutilation, the impact it has, the impact it will have in their sexual and reproductive health ultimately. And lastly, for me, is the issue of intersectionality. It is very close and dear to me. We must be able to connect the issues of gender with other issues that are happening socially, that are happening economically, religiously, culturally. We must be able to connect. This then helps us to be able to bring a wider audience, to be able to participate and listen, to be able to give important and useful views. And so without much ado, thank you very much. I wish you all a fantastic evening, and let's continue being the champions of issues of gender equality in this country. Thank you. You can say kwaheri.
Thank you. Kwaheri.
Kwaheri.
Bye.
Bye, guys.